Our next talk will be from Charles Gore. Graham, if you can just introduce him, so I'll be good.
Thank you very much, Sad. Charles Gore is a man, I think, who needs no introduction to anyone who's worked in hepatitis C over the last 20 years. He was instrumental in dealing with stigma and discrimination. As a man with hepatitis C, he's been very open about his infection, very keen to address the problems of discrimination, and he set up the Hepatitis C Trust in England, as well as president of the World Hepatitis Alliance, and he's been a force for good in tackling the problems of hepatitis C. I'm sad that he can't be with us today, but very pleased that we have his video talk, which I hope the IT team will now spring into life and put on the big screen for us.
Thank you. Charles is going to tell us on impact of stigma and discrimination on people living with viral hepatitis. And I tell you, this is one of the major issues that we are facing, why people don't want to get tested. So he is very kindly sent us a recorded talk. He couldn't come in person to Lahore. Yeah, please.
I'd like to thank the Pakistan Society of Hepatology for inviting me to talk today on a subject that is and one that I think is either not talked about enough or not given enough weight when it is talked about. And that's the subject of stigma and discrimination. So there are many ways in which people living with viral hepatitis can be stigmatized and then discriminated against. And often this is based on ignorance and fear. And so, for example, people with viral hepatitis can be seen as a threat. And that's partly, obviously, because the misapprehension that they're really highly infectious. And therefore that there should be institutional rules protecting everyone else from these people, as if that was really necessary. And example, when I talk based on ignorance, I worked for a while with somebody who was not allowed into the Gulf states because they had had hepatitis C, had been cured, absolutely no virus present, but still the country in question would not allow them in because they didn't understand what a cure meant. And obviously this is relevant to countries like Pakistan, where a lot of people go and work in the Gulf. But also one of the ways that people are stigmatized is that this idea that people have brought it on themselves, that they're to blame. And stigma can often be more than one issue. So, for example, with hepatitis C, because one of the most efficient ways of transmitting it is through infectious drug use, injecting drug use, then clearly this idea that people have done it to themselves takes hold. And then it's very easy to go, and so you're a bad person. And in the early days in the UK, when I was promoting hepatitis C, I asked someone to come on television with me to talk about their diagnosis. And this was a woman who was with a new partner. And she went on television and said that she had hepatitis C. And her new partner's ex-wife saw the program, went, persuaded a judge, therefore a risk to the children, and actually got the judge to forbid the partner to have any contact with the children. So there can be very dire results of some of the institutional ignorance and institutional stigmatization that goes on. And then, of course, this happens a lot with people living with hepatitis B still in many countries where they are tested or either through a program or by chance, and then actually they are banned from having a job, or in some cases going to college. And this, of course, can just totally change people's career path. And this idea that people should be treated differently. I was actually I didn't have much stigma in my particular case when I was living with active hepatitis C. The only thing that happened to me was that I noticed at the dentist, who I'd told I had hepatitis C, that I was always put last in the day. And after a while I began to think, that's really odd. The only appointments I get are at the end of the day. And I challenged them on this, and of course they denied that it had anything to do with hepatitis C. But clearly it did. But the implication there, we're not confident about their cleaning of equipment during the day, only at the end of the day. So that meant they were exposing me to all the viruses that other people had not declared. But again, it's about, ignorance in many cases, but also in that particular case, about very bad practice. So this then, leads to discrimination often, but we also need to think what it means to people who are being stigmatized, what they feel about themselves, that they actually come to think, maybe I don't deserve. And what's terrible is when they start thinking, I do not deserve healthcare, because this can have big catastrophic consequences. And it's important also to think not just about stigma and discrimination, but also about the fear of stigma and discrimination. Because clearly, if you see a case of stigma and discrimination, then that can put you off from actually wanting, for example, to go and get tested. You don't want to be able to say, oh, I've got hepatitis B or hepatitis C, because then you are exposed to that. Or indeed, your children. So a friend of mine had a child with hepatitis C, and it came out because she told the headmistress of the school, and it leaked, and other children really started picking on this boy, and so she had to move schools. And then she rang me one day and said, another child has picked up a pair of compasses and stabbed her son in the arm, and then gone and stabbed other children. And she said to me, I don't know what to do. There's a risk, it might be very small. Should I tell the school and then risk that gets out again? Well, it will in this case, because you'll have to tell the other children to get tested, and then he'll be stigmatized, and then I'll have to move him again, he'll be ostracized, won't have any friends, and so there can be massive consequences of this. As I talked about, losing jobs, opportunities for education. In some countries this can be a bar to marriage. And if people are taking this on themselves in any way, can be a lot of mental health issues, including suicide. But of course, as I said before, one of the critical things is, if this stops people accessing healthcare, both for themselves, but also for public health. And one of the places, unfortunately, that stigma and discrimination is worse is in healthcare settings. I don't know why that should be, but it is there. But certainly in my experience in the UK, people with hepatitis C were immediately regarded as drug users, and therefore going to be problems, and were dealt with in a really much worse way. I think this has changed enormously now, but this was back 20 years ago when I first started. But as I said, if there's an unwillingness to get tested, that's very bad news. It also, with hepatitis B treatment, if you need people to continue with the treatment, this can lead to poor compliance because they don't want to continue to engage with healthcare. And then obviously worse healthcare, worse health outcomes, and then continuing incidents and continuing mortality. And that can lead us to a failure to achieve elimination. And as you know, the standout globally in public health about viral hepatitis are the low testing rates. We are never going to achieve elimination unless we massively increase testing. And if stigma and discrimination are stopping people getting tested, this is going to stop us achieving elimination. So thank you very much. I would like to point you in the direction of the World Hepatitis Alliance's excellent report on the impact of stigma and discrimination on people with hepatitis B, but obviously it applies just as much to people with hepatitis.
Thank you.